Imagine this for a second. Someone calls you and says, I found a body inside a closet. What would you do? Unfortunately, for one person, it wasn't imagination. This was the beginning of a real life nightmare. So turn off the lights, put your headphones on, and let's get into today's story. What's up, guys? Today's case happened in South Korea, and it began on December 25th, 2022. That morning, a woman, we will call her Ashley, woke up extremely happy, and she had two reasons for that. First, she had just moved into her boyfriend's apartment a few days earlier. His name was Lee. Second, it was Christmas Day, and she was excited to celebrate it with him in his home. Ashley was genuinely overjoyed. She wanted to surprise Lee, especially since he had been spoiling her lately, buying her gifts and treating her well. So while Lee was out of the apartment, she decided to start her surprise. The first thing she wanted to do was to feed the three cats and the dog. She started looking for their food around the apartment. She searched everywhere, the kitchen, the cabinet, every corner, but she couldn't find anything. She started thinking, what does this guy even feed them? So she kept searching until she reached a room she had never entered before. Inside that room was a large wardrobe, and the handles were tied shut with a rope. And she thought, who ties a wardrobe like this? She untied the rope, opened the door, and instantly screamed. She collapsed to the floor. Inside the closet was a pound decomposing corpse, and the smell was unbearable. After she began to process what she had just seen, Ashley ran out of the room in complete panic and immediately called the police. The police arrived at the apartment right away. They secured the scene and put out an alert to locate the apartment's owner, Lee. The decomposed body was sent to forensic investigators. Soon after, police identified the victim. The body belonged to the man in his 60s, well known in the area as Mr. T. He worked as a taxi driver. And here's it gets worse. Just hours earlier, his son had filed a missing person report. When police reviewed the report, the son said his father had been missing for 5 days. During those 5 days, the father was sending him text messages, but something felt off. Everyone has their own way of speaking, and these messages didn't sound his father at all. Whenever the son tried to call him, there was no answer. That's why he went to the police. Investigators then questioned Ashley. She asked her where Lee had been 5 days earlier. She said that she and Lee had been having lunch with her family at a restaurant around 11 p.m. Lee ordered them a taxi to go home. After making sure Ashley and her family got into the taxi and drove off, Lee took his own car and went home separately. Police asked her, "Are you sure?" She said yes. He went straight home. Meanwhile, at the same time police were questioning Ashley, they received a new information. Lee had been arrested at a hospital where he was being treated for a hand injury. They took him to the police station. Before questioning him about the body, investigators reviewed his background. He was born in 1991. He had been expelled from the military and served 18 months in prison for violent behavior toward the fellow officers. This wasn't his first time being investigated. He had been jailed and placed under supervision multiple times for drunk driving. He had also been married in 2018 and divorced a year later due to ongoing problems. From the beginning, it was clear this was a man whose life had been filled with trouble, but none of that compared to the body in the closet. When investigators finally asked him about the body, they said, "What's the story behind the body in your wardrobe?" Lee answered, completely calm, "Oh, you mean the taxi driver? Yeah, I killed him." No hesitation, no emotion. Investigators were stunned. They said at least they might say anything, but since he was so honest, they asked him to explain what happened. He said with the same cold tone, "I was upset, so I killed him." At that point, police realized one of the two things was true. Either he didn't understand that he had murdered a human being, or this wasn't his first crime. They began to pressure him. Finally, Lee said, "There is no need for all the pressure. I will tell you everything." He confirmed that Ashley's story was true, but what she didn't know was that Lee had been extremely drunk that night, so drunk that he shouldn't have been driving at all, but he didn't care. On his way home, he took a wrong turn and crashed into a taxi. Lee got out and told the taxi driver to not to call the police. He begged to settle it peacefully. He was terrified because if he was caught drunk driving again, he would go to prison and never drive again. After about 15 minutes of arguing, Lee convinced the driver to come with him to his apartment so they could talk. Once inside the apartment, the driver demanded more money and threatened to call the police. Lee exploded and said, "You are humiliating me because I made a mistake and drove drunk." He grabbed a blunt object and struck the driver in the head repeatedly until the man was dead. Now Lee had a serious problem. He took the victim's phone and wallet, tied the body, and stuffed it into the wardrobe. Then he went outside, took his car, and abandoned it about a kilometer away. After that, he kept texting the victim's son from the victim's phone, pretending the man was alive. Police tracked Lee's movement and reviewed surveillance footage. Everything matched his story, but something still felt wrong. They checked the taxi driver's credit card records. After the man's death, nearly 50 million won had been withdrawn. Where did the money go? Straight to Lee's girlfriend. Gifts, outgoings, hotels, luxury spending. Meanwhile, when police searched the apartment, they found no money at all. They also noticed something is missing: the car's black box, which records all the driving activities. Investigators returned to Lee and told him, "The evidence suggests you planned this." Lee calmly replied, "No, I killed him because he was blackmailing me." Police kept digging, and then they made two terrifying discoveries. The first explained Lee's injury hand. On the early morning on December 25th, Lee had been drinking alone at a restaurant. He approached a group of strangers and offered to buy them drinks because he was rich and lonely. He spent the night bragging, claiming he owned 8 buildings, inherited money, and lived a luxurious life. Then he asked them something disturbing. "If someone offered you $1 million to kill someone, would you do it?" The conversation turned dark about death, murder, and kidnapping. The group got uncomfortable. When Lee went to the bathroom, they left. When he realized they gone, he chased them, fought with them, threatened to kill them, and injured his hand. That's how he ended up in the hospital. Nurses later said Lee told them someone had kidnapped and tortured him, but security cameras proved that was a lie. Lying wasn't new to Lee. Every person he met got a different version of him. A rich hire, a CEO, a real estate owner. None of it was true. The second discovery was worse. The taxi driver wasn't the first victim. The apartment wasn't even in Lee's name. It belonged to a 50-year-old woman who had disappeared in August 2022. Neighbors said Lee had been living with her. When she vanished, Lee told everyone she packed her thing and left. Police contacted her family, just like the taxi driver's son. They said she replied to messages but never answered calls. Lee eventually admitted. He said she demanded money she owed her, so he struck her on the head until she died. He claimed he bought her body in a bag and threw it into a nearby river. But once again, he was lying. He had stolen nearly 300 million won from her, and 40 million was transferred to his account after she had disappeared. When police pressed him for the truth, he said, "I don't remember." Search teams, drones, and patrols combed the river, but her body was never found. To this day, no one knows where she is. Because of Lee's endless lies, police suspect a third victim. They contact 350 people Lee had interacted with. Thankfully, they were all alive. But one person provided a horrifying video. Lee was filmed drawing a cat in a swimming pool, smiling while prevented it from escaping. The case shocked the entire country. In South Korea, police must get a suspect's permission before releasing their photo. When they asked Lee, he said, Police Photoshop my face. I don't want my family to know. But the media didn't leave him alone. Eventually, he was diagnosed as mentally unstable, aggressive, narcissistic, impulsive, and completely lacking remorse. On May 19th, 2023, Lee was sentenced to life in prison. And that's where today's case ends. What do you think? Do you believe there was a third victim? And for all the amazing people who stayed till the very end, there is one terrifying theory I didn't mention. I will leave it up to your detective instinct to figure it out. Here's a hint, it's connected to Lee's cats and dog. Do you see it? If you think you got it, drop I got it in the comments. And let's see who catches it first. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you in the next video.